Turkey is surrounded by wars, but is that why it's struggling? This is Turkey. It's located in Asia, although very close to Europe, with a little bit of its territory, East Thrace, actually being European. And it's not doing very well. Political freedom seems to be decreasing rapidly. Inflation is exploding, and their currency is devaluing tremendously. And when you zoom out a little on the map, we might figure out part of the problem. Turkey is surrounded by conflict. Up north, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. To the east, the Russian occupation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia in Georgia, plus their meddling in that country's government. Still to the east, the never-ending war between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. To the south, we have complete chaos with Syria's civil war and government change, and then Israel bombing Iran's nuclear plants, plus sieging and invading Lebanon and Gaza. Even Cyprus, the tiny island to their south, faces the ever-present issue of being completely divided. Literally, the north being a Turkish protectorate and the south being Cyprus proper. These aren't direct causes for Turkey's crises, but they don't help. So in this video, I want to figure out exactly how they are affecting this country's situation. Let's start by summarizing each of these neighboring conflicts so that we can understand really what it's like living in what I guess you could call a tough neighborhood. To the north, there's the war in Ukraine. Russia's full-scale invasion began in 2022 and it's still grinding on, plus their annexation of Crimea earlier on. Turkey doesn't share a land border with Ukraine, but the two face each other across the Black Sea. That sea matters enormously. It's where Turkish trade passes, it's where its navy operates, and where Russia's expanding presence directly threatens Turkish influence. Any Ukrainian or Russian trade fleet has to pass through Istanbul and the Dardanelles to make it to the rest of the world, and that necessarily brings Turkey into this issue. Further along that same arc, Russia occupies parts of Georgia, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia. These are breakaway regions under Moscow's control since 2008. For Turkey, Georgia is an important regional partner. It's part of the corridor to the Caucasus and Central Asia, where Turkey hopes to meet and trade with its fellow Turkic nation countries. But Russian troops sitting just across the mountains limit how far Turkey can expand its reach. Then to the east, there's the long-running conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. Turkey is firmly on Azerbaijan's side, culturally, politically, even militarily, or they're firmly on the side of whoever is against Armenia. The alliance puts Turkey in direct opposition to Armenia and indirectly to Russia, which traditionally has backed the Armenians. Even when fighting dies down, like right now, the tension never really goes away. Heading south, the Syrian Civil War is still smoldering, if you will. It started in 2011 and has wrecked an entire country. For Turkey, it's also been disastrous. Millions of Syrian refugees have crossed the border, either to stay in Turkey or try to make it to Europe. And Turkish troops have repeatedly intervened to create buffer zones or fight Kurdish militias along the borders, which are militarized, unstable, and expensive to control. Beyond Syria, further south and southeast, there's the Israel-Iran conflict, which flares up every few months. Israel strikes Iranian targets in Syria and Lebanon, Iran funds militias, and then also Israel keeps attacking, invading, and blockading Gaza. These aren't on Turkey's doorstep necessarily, but they shape the region's politics, and Turkey is part of that neighborhood. When Iran and Israel trade blows, or when Gaza is burning down, Turkey is pulled into the debate, sometimes diplomatically and sometimes economically. Then we have Cyprus, a frozen conflict since 1974. The island is divided between the Greek Cypriot South, recognized internationally as Cyprus proper and being a part of the EU, and the Turkish-controlled North, recognized only by Ankara. Turkey's presence there keeps relations with Greece and the EU pretty tense and also increases their military expenses. And speaking of Greece, Turkey's relationship with it is one of endless disputes over airspace, islands, maritime borders, drilling rights in the Asian and Eastern Mediterranean. Both sides routinely scramble jets, they sail warships close to each other and exchange warnings. And finally, there's the ongoing internal Kurdish conflict. I mentioned it earlier in the Syria description. This spans Turkey, Iraq, Syria. The Kurdish PKK has arguably waged a type of insurgency inside Turkey for decades, and the group's presence in neighboring countries drags Turkey into repeated cross-border military operations because they choose to see them as an enemy as well. Put all of that together, and Turkey is essentially surrounded by zones of instability. But hey, speaking of wars, that reminds me of something. Oh, it's the sponsor of today's video, Warthunder. Warthunder is the most comprehensive military vehicle combat game ever made, and it's completely free to play on PC, consoles, and now even on mobile. In it, you take command of over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from more than 10 nations, spanning everything from early biplanes and interwar armor to modern jets and main battle tanks. The attention to detail in this game is just insane. Every vehicle is modeled down to its individual components, engines, ammo racks, crew, armor. All of it can be damaged, disabled, or destroyed. And when something explodes in the game, Warthunder actually shows you how, thanks to their incredible X-ray view feature, where you can see exactly where your shell hit. If you are more of a mobile gamer, there's a brand new mobile version out now on iOS and Android, bringing the same massive battles, incredible visuals, and intuitive controls straight to your phone. Also, if you love customization, this game goes deep. You can personalize your vehicles with unique camouflages, historical markings, and even community-made designs. Best of all, you don't need a fancy setup. You can fly, drive, and fight using just your mouse and keyboard or a controller, and it's built on the Dagor engine, so it runs buttery smooth even on the lower-end machines. So if you want to join a community of over 95 million players already in the fight, click the link in the description to do so. And you can play Warthunder for free today, getting a special bonus pack to start your journey with an exclusive vehicle decorator, in-game currency, and 7 days of a premium account for free. Only available for a limited time, but for both new and returning players who haven't played in the last 6 months on PC and consoles. And now let's get back to the video. So yeah, Turkey's in a pretty difficult position, but in order to understand how much this position actually influences what is happening to it, we need to take a look at that and understand what's going on inside the country. For years, Turkey was seen as a rising power, a bridge between Europe and Asia, literally a regional powerhouse with a growing economy and a pretty confident foreign policy, but that image has been fading. Politically, Turkey has become more authoritarian. Elections still happen, but the playing field is far from fair. Opposition politicians face arrests, trials, journalists are also jailed, and media outlets that criticize the government are shut down or taken over by allies. The judiciary has been politicized. Protests are often crushed. Many citizens feel they no longer have much of a voice. The result is that Turkey, once seen as a democratic model for the Muslim world, is now closer to being an elected autocracy. And economically, things have gotten arguably even worse. Inflation has soared, officially around 33% in late 2025, but unofficially many Turks say it feels much higher. Prices of basic goods like bread, rent, and fuel have skyrocketed. The Turkish lira has lost massive value over the past few years. People's savings have evaporated and wages haven't kept up. Why? Well, part of it is global instability. But the other part seems to be domestic mismanagement. The government's economic policy has often defied conventional logic. They keep interest rates low, even as inflation rose. They chase growth through credit expansion, and they interfere with the central bank's independence. This makes investors lose confidence. Foreign capital flees, and the currency tanks. Meanwhile, corruption has supposedly worsened. Independent institutions have been hollowed out, and the rule of law has weakened. The combination of all these things makes the economy pretty fragile. And on top of all of that, there's a good amount of social pressure. Millions of refugees, especially from Syria, potentially contribute to strained housing, jobs, and public services. Youth unemployment is high. Many young, educated Turks are leaving the country in search of better opportunities abroad. It's not a coincidence that Germany hosts at least 3 million Turkish people. And this last issue is directly connected to one of the things that is happening right at their doorstep, the Syrian Civil War. But what about the other conflicts? Are they affecting Turkey in the same way? Let's find out. First, the war in Ukraine. It may not be on Turkey's border, but it hits close to home. The Black Sea, once a relatively calm space, has become a military zone. Russia's navy dominates, trade routes are at risk, Turkish grain exports, maritime insurance, and shipping routes are all facing disruption. Turkey also has to walk a tightrope diplomatically. It's a NATO member, so it officially opposes Russia's invasion, but at the same time, they rely heavily on Russia for gas, trade, and tourism. They even bought Russian weapons in the past. So Ankara is constantly balancing selling drones to Ukraine while still talking to Moscow. That kind of juggling act creates uncertainty. It affects foreign investment and complicates Turkey's ties both with the East and West. It's like they can't commit to either of the sides, and you would think maybe they could at least profit from it, but it doesn't seem like they do. Then in Georgia, Russia's occupation of Abkhazia and South Ossetia blocks Turkey's ambitions in the Caucasus. Turkey wants to be a major trade and energy corridor to Central Asia, but with Russian troops sitting just across the border, every pipeline, railway, project, everything becomes riskier. And it depends not just on their relationship with the Caucasus powers, but also with Russia. Nearby, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan is one of the few where Turkey can claim a win, I guess, since its ally of Azerbaijan has come out stronger, but even that victory comes with costs. Turkey has poured military support and money into Baku, and it's tied its fate to a volatile region where another flare-up could easily drag it back in. They still have an incredibly tense and negative relationship with Armenia, and that support given to Azerbaijan costs Turkey money every year. The Syrian Civil War, though, like we saw, has been the worst of all. Millions of refugees have entered Turkey. It makes it the world's largest refugee hosting country. That's a massive humanitarian effort, but also a major political and economic strain, and many Turkish citizens resent the situation. Meanwhile, Turkey's repeated operations in northern Syria have cost billions. The army controls pockets of territory there, trying to push back Kurdish militias it sees as enemies, but the fighting never ends. Cross-border attacks continue, and relations with both the US and Russia are complicated by who they support in Syria, because the support doesn't always match, or actually it usually never does. It's kind of a repeat of the Ukraine situation. Further south, in Gaza, Lebanon, and Iran, every attack by Israel sends shockwaves through Turkey. The government likes to position itself as a champion of Palestinian rights, but that stance hasn't really translated into action, and at the same time, it can strain ties with some Western allies or investors from Gulf countries. Energy prices spike when regional wars flare up, and this hits Turkey's already fragile economy. And even though it's kind of frozen in time, the dispute in Cyprus is also a constant strain. To be fair, this one is Turkey's exclusive responsibility. Well, almost exclusive. But they still refuse to recognize the Republic of Cyprus, an EU member. It has effectively blocked part of its own relations with the EU. The standoff over maritime borders, gas exploration has led to sanctions, threats, and limited cooperation. It all seems to have to do with the fact that Cyprus is an Hellenic nation, essentially Greek in culture, and Turkey's government doesn't like Greece. The two NATO allies are locked in one of the world's longest running rivalries. Every time a Turkish jet flies near a Greek island or a Greek patrol enters disputed waters, both countries' media light up with outrage. Turkey spends billions maintaining military readiness in the Aegean Sea, money that could be used elsewhere. Greece does the same. Many blamed part of their financial crisis on the obsession that they have with super high military spending, over 3% of their GDP. And finally, the Kurdish conflict inside of Turkey. The Kurdish question remains unresolved. Turkey's consideration of the Kurdish party as enemies and some hostile actions by their part contribute to tearing apart their society's internal fabric, if you will. And all these conflicts at their doorstep add up to enormous stress. But are they the main reason for Turkey's issues? Probably not. Turkey's economic crisis didn't start because of the war in Ukraine or the fighting in Syria. It started because of years of economic mismanagement. The erosion of democracy wasn't caused by foreign wars either. It was a domestic choice made step by step as power became more concentrated. What the wars do is make all of Turkey's existing weaknesses worse. They act as stress multipliers. When your economy is fragile, a refugee crisis hits harder. When your diplomacy is overextended, every regional escalation feels like a threat. And when your government is focused on foreign influence and military posturing, it has less energy for domestic reform. In a sense, Turkey's neighborhood is like a stormy sea, but I guess it's up to the captain's skill to make sure whether they go through it unscathed or not. So I guess we have to wait and see if they're able to turn the situation around. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you to my patrons for their direct support, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge. Thanks again to Warthunder for sponsoring this video. If you want to try and play it out for free today, make sure to click the links in the description.